Welcome to Seighford Hall. Seighford Hall is a house that appears to have later 16th to early 17th century origins, but the radical later changes made to it, particularly in the 19th century, make an accurate assessment difficult. There seems to be no doubt that it was built for the Eld family, and almost certainly for Richard Eld, who lived from 1546 to 1621. In 1574, Richard Eld of Seighford was granted a coat of arms and crest. Eld had been born in Derbyshire and had managed to be appointed Treasurer and Steward to the notorious Walter Devereux, 1st Earl of Essex and Earl Marshal of England. Eld was paymaster of Essex's army during his brutal campaigns in Ireland. Essex had strong Staffordshire connections, being the 11th Baron Ferrers of Chartley and Lord Lieutenant of the county. This could be why Eld came into possession of Seighford, and is generally considered to be the original owner of the hall. The Elds continue to hold the Seighford estate to this day. The hall, on approximately 17 acres, was sold out of the estate in 1963, and the family seat has now moved to the adjacent Cooksland Hall. After the death of Francis Eld of Seighford in 1760 without issue, the estate passed to his half-brother John Eld of Dorking, Surrey. After his death in 1796, aged 92, it passed to his son Francis Eld, who also lived to a great age, dying in 1817, aged 87. By that time, it seems that the house had been extended considerably, with the addition of brick-built wings to either side of the original. The hall is reputed to be haunted, and a letter describing a visitation of a spirit from over 230 years ago was discovered in a box of artefacts at nearby Shugborough Hall. It records the story of how, in the early hours of Tuesday, March 29, 1785, Mr. Francis Eld of Seighford Hall was in a room with his infant daughter when he experienced a puff of air across his face and saw a sort of cloud or vapour which took on the appearance and voice of his mother. The ghost spoke to him, saying, "My child, be not grieved, I am dead, but happy." Mr. Eld was unaware his mother, who was residing at Pitt Place in Surrey, had died during the time of his visitation. The following morning, fearing bad news, he ordered his servant to accompany him to Stafford Post Office, where he collected a letter written by his father's housekeeper at Pitt Place. It stated his mother was tolerably well and had eaten remarkably hearty of a hare which had been sent to her from Seighford by her son. Mr. Eld's anxiety was briefly suppressed until he realised it was composed on Saturday, March 26th, 2 days before the haunting. During the coach journey home, Mr. Eld repeatedly told his servant he was sure he would hear some bad news about his mother soon. The following Friday, on April the 1st, Mr. Eld returned to Stafford and received a letter informing him his mother had died on the preceding Monday night or Tuesday morning, March 28th or 29th, coinciding with the time of the visitation. This realisation caused him to faint away in shock. At the funeral, Mr. Eld told his father about the mysterious haunting, which turned him into jelly. Mr. Eld's father, John Eld of Dorking, was a notable benefactor of Stafford General Infirmary, who was painted by renowned society painter Thomas Gainsborough. The handwritten account comes with correspondence between Reverend Thomas Whitby of Creswell and Reverend Townson of Malpass, Cheshire, discussing this very uncommon event, as well as a statement from Francis Eld's servant taken down by Whitby. The servant's testimony is treated respectfully. The man is not a common menial servant, but one who rents a small farm in the neighbourhood and is employed by Mr. Eld to take care of his woods and game, and when he comes to Seighford for the hunting season, this man attends him in his sports. The man is more sensible and intelligent than persons of his situation usually are, bold and resolute, and so that I think one may venture to depend upon the accuracy of his relation. The fact that Mr. Eld's experience was documented and discussed by members of the clergy, as well as the servant's testimony, underlines how greatly he was affected by the incident. Seeing the ghost of his own mother telling him she had passed away when he thought she was alive was frightening enough. When his worst fears were met and he realised her visitation coincided with her passing, it was enough to make him faint from shock. The earliest census the hall appears on is from 1841, and in 1841 a different Francis Eld is living at the hall with his family. He is aged 65 and is a widower. With him is his eldest child, also called Francis, who is 40, George aged 30, Edward aged 30, Mary aged 35 and Caroline aged 30. There are another 16 people living at the hall, all presumably servants. 10 years later, and Francis Eld is still residing at the hall. He is down as 77 years old and is listed as magistrate for Staffordshire. He has 4 children living with him, and there seems to be discrepancies on the ages from the 1841 census. Mary is now down as age 55 and listed as a fund holder. A fund holder was someone whose main income was from the interest and dividends received from investments, usually made to secure an income in old age. Francis is aged 54 and is the Deputy Lieutenant for Staffordshire. George is aged 50 and listed as a gentleman, which probably meant he lived off his father's money. Edward, who is down as age 41 and described as a landed proprietor, so he owned land or properties and money from them. There is also a Francis Chambers, who is Francis Eld's nephew. He is aged 40 and described as an annuitant. An annuitant on a census record is someone who receives a regular income from investments or an annuity. The term may also refer to someone who receives an annual allowance or an institutionalised pension. Also, there is Maria Chambers, a niece, who is aged 44 and she is also a fund holder. Working in the house are a cook, a lady's maid, 3 house servants, a butler, a groom, a farm servant and a laundress. By 1861, Francis Eld Sr. has passed away and his son Francis is head of the house. He is aged 64 and listed as a gentleman. His sister Mary lives with him and she is now 65 and listed as a lady. Also his brother George, aged 62, and Edward, now 52. They are both listed as no occupation. His cousins Francis and Maria Chambers still live in the hall. Francis is 52 and no occupation, and Maria is aged 54 and she is also listed as a lady. They have a housekeeper, a housemaid, 3 general servants, a lady's maid and a groom. For some reason, according to the 1871 census, the hall is empty, but in 1881 it is being lived in by J.W. Williams and his family. J.W. Williams is aged 48 and he is an ironmaster, originally from Hales Owen. He is also a Justice of the Peace. Could he be described as new money? Everything the landed gentry despised. With him is his wife E.H. Williams and she is aged 52. There is also an S.B. Johnson, aged 54. She is a widow and a sister-in-law. Her daughter Maud, who is 18. There is also a cook, housemaid, an under-housemaid, kitchen maid, butler, footman and groom. By 1891 we have a new branch of the Eld family living in the hall. You guessed it, the head is called Francis. Francis F. Eld is aged 34 and listed as living on own means. This Francis could possibly be a nephew, as it seems Francis from 1861 was childless. Francis F. Eld is married and his wife is named Sarah Jane and she is 36. They have 5 children: Annie Adeline, aged 8, Ida Constance, aged 6, Winifred 5, Dulcie 4 and Violet aged 3 months. They also have servants in the house and they consist of 2 housemaids, a butler, a cook, a kitchen maid, a nurse, governess and a gardener. 10 years later, in 1901, the Eld family is gone again. As Francis F. Eld is listed as having no sons on the 1891 census, could it be there were no more male heirs to leave it to, or could they not afford to live there anymore? But in 1901 we have a William Warrington Dobson, aged 39, living at Seighford Hall with his family. William is a managing director of a brewery. He lives with his wife Alice, who is aged 39. They have 2 daughters, Alice aged 11 and Nora Louise aged 5. They have a Sarah Meeking living with them. She is a widow and aged 64. possibly Alice's mother. They also have a cook, kitchen maid, scullery maid, sewing maid, 2 housemaids, a coachman, footman and pantry boy working in the house. By 1911, William Dobson is 49 and now the chairman of his brewery. Alice is also aged 49. They still have 2 daughters living with them, Alice now aged 21 and Molly aged 9. There's no sign of Nora Louise, who would be 15. They have a Milburn Edward Clark, who is down as a guest. He's aged 32 and a brewer. Listed as servants, they have a footman, 3 housemaids, a hall boy, sewing maid, kitchen maid, scullery maid, butler and chauffeur. Interesting to see that in 10 years they've gone from travelling by horse and carriage to a car. William Dobson is still at the Hall in 1921. He is now aged 60 and has risen to the position of Managing Director of the brewery, which is named as the Parker Burslem Brewery. His wife Alice is aged 59. His daughter Alice is now aged 31, Nora Louise is back and she is 25, and Molly aged 19. Working in the house is a bullion, a footman, French chef, 2 housemaids, kitchen maid and a scullery maid. Finally, on the 1939 register, William Dobson is now aged 78. Sadly, he is a widower and a retired chairman. His daughter Alice lives with him. She is single and aged 50. Also living in the house is a Josephine M. Gartland, who is aged 46 and she is listed as a companion secretary. I don't know if she worked for William or his daughter Alice. There is also a Geoffrey W. Dobson, aged 51, who is the brewery chairman, and Edith L. Dobson, aged 38. Unfortunately, on the 1939 register, it doesn't give you the details of who these people are, so I don't know if they are relations of William Dobson or if they are brother and sister or husband and wife. Working in the house are a parlour maid, cook, kitchen maid, a scullery maid, head housemaid, 2 under housemaids and a valet. I was unable to find who resided in the hall after 1939, but at some point it was turned into a care home. This care home closed in approximately 2000 and it sat empty for 20 years until in June 2020 Seighford Hall was acquired by the First Blue Group Limited. They had big plans to turn the hall into a luxury hotel and was frequently posting on social media updates on the renovation. These posts abruptly stopped on the 15th of March 2023 with no explanation as to why or what was happening to the building. Since then, the hall has sat empty and exposed to the elements. The inside has been stripped back, exposing the original beams and brickwork, which is interesting to see, but the once beautiful interior is now just a soulless shell. With no word as to what is happening to this 16th century home and no sign of anything happening soon, what does the future hold for Seighford Hall?